Joining me on the program now from Family First, Bob McCoskrie. You got any ideas what the term means, Bob? Imported culture wars? You'd be a bit of an expert on this, wouldn't you?
Well, the interesting thing is that I sometimes do watch the news, mainly as for research purposes and for commentary, and I just kept on hearing this phrase, imported culture war. We don't want no imported culture war, etc. And I thought to myself, gee, a lot of people are saying this. So I did a little bit of research, put together a little compilation.
And imported culture wars.
Imported culture wars.
And importing cultural wars.
Imported foreign
culture, woke wars, or whatever it is.
And as you saw, a lot of people are using the phrase in the media and commentary. Politicians are saying it. It's even being used in the Parliamentary House as well. And so I just simply asked the question, okay, if there is an imported culture war, what is the culture war and who's importing it? Because from what I could tell, it was tended to be people on the left of politics that were constantly throwing out the accusation, and it was generally the accusation was coming at us. And I remember the first time that it came up was during the cannabis referendum, and we got together a coalition of New Zealand-based groups and councillors and leaders to form the Say No to Dope campaign. And we looked around the world and said, okay, who's been doing research in this? And we found a group called SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana in the United States, who have been analysing this data for years. And we said, okay, well, let's sort of link up to that group. Well, then we were accused by Andrew Little and Chloe Schwarbrick of importing, you know, American talk points and all that. The problem is that it's not a New Zealand war, it's a culture war. It's about the debate around, for example, for New Zealand, Judeo-Christian values versus the opposition, which is Marxist values, critical theory, all that type of stuff.
And when we say the term imported culture war, I mean, at one level we could say, well, Christianity, that's an imported culture. Quite happy to be a warrior for that cause, right?
Yeah, well, when I looked at some of the culture wars, for example, around the area of abortion, euthanasia, cannabis, even gay marriage, conversion therapy, a whole lot of these issues, I actually found that, I mean, let me give you a classic example. 1973, Roe v. Wade, the abortion law that was passed in the United States through the Supreme Court by 9 dudes, by the way, 9 men, who apparently aren't supposed to speak on abortion, but they were allowed to because people agreed with them on that one. So anyway, they legalized abortion in the United States, 1973. And then I found a historic photo of a protest in New Zealand in 1973 after that saying, we want that in New Zealand. And of course, we sort of went down that abortion on demand with the Abortion Sterilisation Act, or whatever it's called, in 1977, 4 years later. So who imported that culture war? Well, it was the pro-abortion side. Who imported the, we want to legalise cannabis for recreational use? I mean, that was in states around the United States and Portugal. And suddenly it's imported into New Zealand. Euthanasia, I mean, started in Netherlands, Belgium, Canada, and we've imported that debate into New Zealand. So they need to be careful about the finger they're pointing, because there's 3 fingers pointing back at them. The other classic one, of course, Andrew, is Black Lives Matter. I mean, a case that happens in the United States, and suddenly during COVID, we have a whole lot of protesters out on the street for BLM, which was actually a specific to the United States.
Taking up the civil rights movement in the United States with a New Zealand twist in that regard. I suppose a summary of it would be that, and particularly recently, because as you say, this has been going on for a few years, but particularly what seems to be happening at the moment, there's been a change of government in the US. People may have noticed this, and the pendulum seems to be swinging politically and ideologically in the opposite direction. So anybody who has the same view and anybody who is celebrating what is happening in the United States at the moment, that automatically gets labelled as an imported culture war. Is that an appropriate summary?
Well, it's interesting timing that we're doing this today, Andrew, because there was a culture war in Canada and it swung to the left. There's going to be a culture war in Australia on Saturday, and the polling is suggesting that it's going to maintain left. So it depends on the country, and it's not, I don't think it's imported culture war as such. It's simply, it's a debate of the ideas and where we want society to go. And for social conservatives, we obviously, and for Family First, we're championing maintaining the Judeo-Christian values. You know, I don't want to import the culture war. I want to export it, actually, because most of the changes to our legislation are trying to boot Jesus out of parliamentary prayer, and to liberalize our laws. So yeah, I don't want to import it, but I just find it slightly ironic that the group that are accusing us of importing the culture wars, they're the ones that imported it in the first place. But here's the key thing, Andrew. Why the question is, why are they throwing out this term ad nauseum? And it's really a form of jamming, which is designed to basically oppose your argument by throwing a negative label on it. So if they use bigot or phobic or Nazi or far right, then, and you know, being white is almost an insult now. If they can throw out a label, so you know, we don't want imported culture wars. It's designed to shut you up because you don't want the negative label. And I would just encourage people to say, well, what culture war are you talking about? Let's examine who actually introduced this debate into New Zealand. You'll get a funny response. Actually, Andrew, in my research, the only kind of culture war that I could find that maybe you could argue that New Zealand exported was prostitution. We were the first nation in the world to decriminalize prostitution, my understanding. So
you're happy to be called you're happy to be called a cultural warrior, Bob, because some people would describe you as that. They may mean it as an insult, but you could take it as a compliment.
I take it as a compliment because I'm just a warrior for Judeo-Christian values in our culture, because I know that they work, and I'm seeing the negative outcome of when we turn away from those values and when we import negative culture wars that emphasize division and Marxism and critical theory and you know, radical sexuality and gender confusion. So no, I'm happy to be a warrior for Christ.
Now the other thing which strikes me as being a little bit unusual about this, it strikes me as being a little bit xenophobic, or saying, oh no, we don't want imported culture wars. We just want indigenous culture wars. We don't want any of that foreign muck coming over here, stealing all of our culture wars. We want to do, actually saying that anything that comes from overseas is bad is actually a form of xenophobia, or perhaps even racism. I'm sure they'd push back against that idea.
Yeah, but deep down, they're basically saying we don't like the idea, so therefore we don't want it to come into the country. And look, it's designed to shut down the debate. The fact of the matter is that, and this is not happening in Muslim countries, by the way, or Hindu countries. This is a debate that is the kind of culture war is happening in Christian-based countries. Western countries like Canada, the UK, Australia, America, parts of Europe. And this is where the war is going on, as they try to boot out the Judeo-Christian values and boot out any remnants of Christianity. I mean, we saw that actually just yesterday, Andrew. I don't know if you saw. I mean, I'm a big Liverpool fan, and one of the guys that scored one of the goals to win the Premier League on Monday, just to, you know, rub it into anybody supporting another team, he took off his shirt and it said, I stand for Jesus, or something like that. Now the FA actually have said they might discipline him. The problem was that 4 years ago, they allowed players to take off their shirts to reveal support for Black Lives Matter. They tell their captains to wear rainbow armbands. So you can support BLM and LGBT, but if you have the word Jesus on your shirt, then that's persona non grata. And that's kind of the hypocrisy of the so-called diversity and inclusion. They're diverse and inclusive, but not if you bring up Christianity or Jesus or Judeo-Christian values. And that's the irony of their approach.
Just finally on this one, is it possible to have imported culture? I mean, honestly, where does our local culture stop and global culture start? Because, I mean, hey, even though we are a little collection of islands at the bottom of the South Pacific, we've got pretty porous borders when it comes to our culture. To say that you could be able to stop something coming into the country, some ideology, as if it were a virus, let's not go back there, but actually there is a sense where there is a global culture where ideas will flow from one part of the world to the other in seconds over Twitter or X. It's perhaps naive to say, like King Canute, we can say, let's hold back the tide on this one.
Yeah, and the negative label on that is, of course, colonization. Colonization is the problem because it's so-called importing of the culture. But as you say, we're living in a very multicultural international community now, both through social media and through communication channels, the way we deal with each other as countries. I mean, people are getting annoyed with Trump with his tariffs because that's sort of exclusionary and it's getting rid of that global approach. But yeah, I mean, I think we are international, and that's why, I mean, for in my role, as I look at some of the cultural changes that are happening in New Zealand, I'm researching what's happening in Australia and the UK and Canada and the United States and Europe. And I'm looking at, okay, if they've gone down this track of liberalisation, of changing the rule, of removing the fence, then what's been the outcome? I mean, for example, yesterday I was interviewing two guys, experts in narcotics and in police from Colorado, and they've legalised cannabis for recreational use, and they did it back in 2013, so 12 years experience. And of course, you just have to look at the outcome in Colorado from legalizing cannabis. Well, that's a wake-up call to New Zealanders. And when we voted no in 2020, I think New Zealand dodged a bullet. So this is the kind of the global community. And I know that the global community, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, UN, there's a lot of negative there because they have been overtaken by leftist radicals. But there is a global community, and we need to find what's good in that global community. That's what we'd like to import. I'm trying to export the bad stuff.
Yeah, export the bad stuff and don't put too many tariffs on the good stuff coming in.
Put the tariffs on the imports, the bad ones.
Bob, thank you for your insight. Always good to chat. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.